Good evening, good Abend, bonsoir, buenas noches to investors in North and South America. 我係個節目員，안녕하세요各位早晨 Good morning to investors in Asia. Buenas noches, buenas noches, good night to investors in Europe and Africa. I'm Daniel speaking from Hong Kong. It's 12th June here and 11th June in Wall Street. This week I have three main points to talk about. Number one, is sanctioning on Russia effective? Number two, broken windows theory. Number three, interest rate outlook. And then stock recommendations. Subscribe, like, and share. Remember to click the bell, please. Watch our playlist again so as to grasp the continuous trend of the market and refresh your mind. Since the outbreak of the military action of Russia against Ukraine, the West has levied a lot of sanctions against Russia. The magnitude is tightening day by day, even tighter than against North Korea and Iraq. Russia wants to have the war prolonged so as to generate hyperinflation in Western countries and make them tired of the war. But the problem lies that sanctioned items still can arrive Russia through nearby countries in Central Asia. China also said their cooperation with Russia has no upper limit. So what's the situation now? If Russia can really get needed chips through smuggling, they need not to dismantle from refrigerators, washing machines, and rice cookers imported from mid-Asia countries. Large amounts of household applicants are imported for dismantling. That means even low-end chips are also treated as an important source. Let's see the budget deficit of Russia. Only for the first quarter, it has already consumed 80% of the total yearly budget, and by year-end will be over 300%. The style of fighting in Ukraine is in a multi-area style. During the first few days of the fighting, they needed to dig trenches as in World War I. Later on, Russia used convoys of trucks for 60 kilometers as in World War II and bombarded 80,000 cells per day. The expense is tremendous. Later, it shrank to 30,000 shells per day only. The Russian deficit of the first 4 months of this year is up to 34 billion US dollars. The change to use drones and the latest irregular trajectory hypersonic missile of this century, but unluckily were intercepted by the Patriot system, which came into use in the Gulf War of last century. So the style of fighting extended from 1914 to 2023, which is so dramatic. How to defeat the US? It is impossible to use high technology or strong military power. Fortresses are breached from within. The only way to defeat US is to prolong the war and make it a burden that aroused the anti-war sentiment and made them retreat as in Vietnam and Afghanistan. Please refer to video 27 at 2023-0417. The military expenditure of Ukrainian war is just 0.2% of GDP, and while for Afghanistan war of 10 years is 0.3%, and the two Iraqi wars only 0.6%. Vietnam war is 0.95%. Korean War is 2.7% of GDP. Above all, no US soldiers died in Ukraine. So if Russia wants to use the Ukrainian war to arouse hyperinflation of US or Western countries or arouse anti-war sentiment, it is still far away. But on the other hand, the Western countries are making Russia on the edge of collapse. That is why so many broken window effects such as Poland has their guerrillas, besides freedom of Russia and voluntary crops, are occupying some villages now. If Russia cannot press down the guerrilla troops in 1 or 2 weeks completely, it will swell up to make an actual threat to the regime of Putin. In the Hollywood movie Top Gun, US just used the F-14 to shoot down Su-35 of Russia. But it's a movie. Now Ukraine is upgraded to F-18, and we have to see how it performs in actual fighting. I have already said when without the F-16, Ukraine cannot do anything. When without China, Russia cannot win the war. In April, the UK and Netherlands formed an international league to supply fighter planes to Ukraine. Australia will take 41 retired F-18 fighters from the Newcastle Air Base, who still have 1/3 of the mileage that can be used because they have already upgraded their own fighters to F-35. The total numbers of fighters, including F-16, F-18 and Mirage 2000, will be about 150 to 200 sets. For in case of numbers, Russia has 200 sets of 4th generation fighters, Su-57, and also 131 sets of MiG-31 for defense, but no air supremacy. They also have 98 sets of Su-35 and 123 sets of Su-30SM, even though they have over 2,000 fighter planes, but only the above 552 sets can send to the battlefield, which is more than the 200 new arrivals of Ukraine. The existing usable 144 sets of Ukraine Air Force are just Su-24, Su-25, MiG-27 or MiG-29. So who will be the winner? Better study the air supremacy, well, both on defense and attack. Anyway, the answer is quite simple. As for interest rates, good news and bad news come alternatively. In the employment report of early June, non-farm payroll jumped up from 294K to 339K. It's good news to the economy, but bad news to inflation. However, the unemployment rate rose sharply from 3.4% to 3.7%, anyway still in the nice level of the landing of the moon of late 1969. So these two offset each other. But for the initial claims of last Thursday, bad news came at last. It rose sharply to 261K, the highest since October 2021, even higher than the figure of March 2021, where the way high cycle starts. Does it mean after 16 months way high, inflation cannot be controlled? Of course, we cannot judge just by any single figure. We have to view it on the whole. This is bad news to the economy, but good news for controlling inflation. For now, it is in a state of cost pool inflation, where salary always plays an important part. This week, we have a lot of figures to observe. The financial market is not just a game of figures, but also a game of alphabets. This week, we have to mind the CPI on Tuesday, PPI and FOMC on Wednesday. The CPI has dropped from the high of 9.1% of June 2022 to 4.9% of April within a year after a series of rate hikes, but still far away from the target of 2.0%. This time, the inflation is expected to be lowered from 4.15% to 4.3%. The PPI of last time was 2.3%, and this time is expected to be lowered to 1.5% to 2.1%. However, the most important is the forecast of interest rate probabilities. In the June 13 to 14 FOMC meeting, the probability of keeping interest rate unchanged is 72.4%. But in the June 25th to 26th meeting, the probability of raising interest rate for 25 base points is 52.0%. But these figures are changing every hour, every minute, every second, even in holidays. So when this video is released, it should have changed somewhat. How to read these charts? Please refer to YouTube video 26 at 2023-0410. There's a concise guideline over there. All the above data are recorded in the website of stoffing.com. Some in form of electronic handouts and some in form of 14 teaching videos, where we also have a daily report called the US Stock Express to keep everything updated and no need to wait for 1 week for the YouTube comments. As for stock recommendations, a lot of people are afraid that the Nasdaq has risen a lot and will have adjustment soon. So if you have such a worry, better buy the 5 high dividend stocks of closed-end funds. This time I avoided the ever-rising IT stocks and concentrated on closed-end funds only. The first one is the Korea Fund KF. It is a closed-end non-diversified management investment company. It actually is an investment on Korean stocks, but you can treat it as a single stock. The dividend has a yearly return of 37.52%, but for the TTM, that is the dividend of the past 12 calendar months, it is just 30.67%. The price fluctuation is quite large, but for such stocks, the focus should be on the dividend and not on the price. In the 3-year chart, it is quite low, but in the 6-month chart, it is quite promising. So if it rises, take profit at once. If it falls, take the high dividends, which means no way to lose. The second one is the Great M Capital Corporation, GECC, but this is an example of not buying it. Sometimes we should approach from another angle, as I have already said about the disadvantages of air tax, setbacks of AI intelligence, and errors of ChatGPT. If you think from the reverse side, you are already a high-class investor than others. The reason is very simple. This year has no dividend announced yet. Even though it is set to have 30.19%, it was the yield of last year. The Cornerstone Strategic Value Fund, CLM, is a diversified, closed-end management investment company incorporated in Maryland. The yearly yield is 25.50%, but the ratio is diminishing year by year, from 2.764% of 2017 to 2.1116% of 2022. Anyway, it is still quite high. Again, in the 3-year chart, it is quite low, but the 6-month chart is quite promising, which means you have a chance to earn both price and dividend. The fourth is Cornerstone Total Return Fund, CRF, also a fund in Maryland. Mind that the closed-end funds differs from the open-end management investment companies, commonly referred to as mutual funds. In the closed-end funds, they do not need to redeem their shares at the option of the shareholder and generally list their shares for trading on a security exchange. The fund's investment advisor uses a balanced approach, including value and growth. That is, both should be minded. The yearly yield is 25.02%, just a little lower than the CLM. The last one is the Bancroft Fund, BCV. When referring to the past history, even the yearly yield is just 24.34%, the lowest when comparing with the previous 4 funds, but it is rising for the past decade, so quite worthwhile to invest. So for the grand counter-offensive of Ukraine, it has already started, and about 100 advanced fighter planes will arrive in Ukraine. In the next 10 days, they will be in the form of flying tigers of World War II that are driven by international pilots, as the writer has already said several times. But on the Russian side, they said that the counter-offensive of Ukraine was unsuccessful and pilots flew to Russia to surrender because they had not got the salary for 2 months, and the arsenals of Ukraine were bombarded seriously. NATO took no action to help Ukraine, just sitting down and looking. Russian soldiers are in high spirits to fight, for they will recruit 500,000 people more to join the war, and victory is just one step beyond. But Ukrainian soldiers are in great despair now. Also mind that when the Novakharkov Dam was destroyed, both Russia and Ukraine blame it as a war crime of the other side. When you have enough military knowledge, the answer is written on the wall. Very simple indeed. No need to listen to those news, for some people are unable to tell the truth from the false. Anyway, the Summer Solstice, June 21st, is coming. I have already stated that May 6th is the start of summer, is the turning point, and it has been shown several times that so many cameramen gather at the metro stations of Hong Kong University Memorial and Decisive Day. When you have enough financial astrology knowledge together with military knowledge, and be in a high class of investment, no matter in the long run or short run. Now, please study well the particulars of F-14, F-16, F-18, Mirage 2000, and also the Su-57, Su-35, Su-30SM, and MiG-31. Above all, including their background and foreground, and thus you will know everything faster and earlier than other investors. So again, subscribe, share, and like. Please, sayonara, auf Wiedersehen, adieu,
Bye bye. See you next week.